Hey y'all, and welcome to the Miles Vexler podcast. My name is Miles, and Senator Kennedy just dragged the FBI director through a gauntlet of lies, laptop cover-ups, and million-dollar payouts to Trump-hating agents, all while the DOJ hides Epstein's files like they're guarding the recipe to Coca-Cola. Let's dive in. Hey, it's Miles Vexler. There is a special kind of silence that comes right after a tough question. Today we got a lot of that long pauses, nervous glances, and suddenly we will circle back. But we are circling now. I've got the footage and the follow-up they avoided. Subscribe now because this is where unanswered questions go to get answers.
Mr. Director, worry not. We'll make sure your agency is adequately funded. This judge you arrested in Wisconsin, she was breaking federal law, wasn't she?
Yes, that's why we arrested her.
She was helping an illegal immigrant escape being taken into custody. Is that right?
Yes, and the field agents decided to open the case, work the case.
And as Americans, do we get to pick and choose which laws we want to follow?
We do not.
If you're a state court judge, do you get to decide you don't want to follow federal law?
No.
And if you violate federal law, you get arrested, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
That's called equal treatment under the law, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. I think Ms. Page worked for Justice. The Inspector General found in its investigation that they hated President Trump and they really wanted Secretary Clinton to win. Is that true?
That's correct, sir.
And this would be the same same Ms. Page who sent an email to Mr. Strzok with whom she was having an affair. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Mr. Strzok with the FBI, senior official at the FBI replied, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Did I read that correctly?
You did, Senator.
Okay. Now, Ms. Page got quit before she could get fired. Mr. Strzok was fired. And predictably, they filed a lawsuit because in Washington, it's easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire a federal employee. Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
So the Attorney General decided to give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 after they were fired after actively interfering in the 2016 election. Is that right?
My understanding is that was a settlement they agreed to.
Pass me the sick bucket, please. The Hunter Biden laptop. In October of 2016, shortly before the election, the New York Post wrote a story that was widely covered talking about Mr. Hunter Biden's influence peddling scheme based on his laptop. A couple of weeks later, Secretary of State, soon-to-be Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, organized a group of 51 so-called intelligence experts. Had some real rock stars on the list. Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, and they said, oh, no, this story in the New York Post is not true. It's based on Russian disinformation. You remember that?
I do, Senator, as the lead investigator for Russiagate for the House Intel Committee.
Yeah. The FBI had the laptop for 10 months, hadn't they?
They did, Senator.
So the FBI knew right before the election that it wasn't Russian disinformation, didn't they?
And that was confirmed by the Inspector General's report.
Yeah. Who at the FBI refused to let the FBI tell the American people the truth?
I don't have that name in front of me, sir.
Well, would you look?
I will, sir.
I'd like to know. I'd like a name, not a division. I'd like the name. A person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Cash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. As you're well aware, DOJ...
After pressing Kash Patel on the suspicious circumstances surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death, Senator John Kennedy didn't stop there. He pivoted straight into tough questions on trade, grilling Howard Lutnick about the Biden administration's confusing tariff and treaty strategy. Don't miss what happened next. Take a look.
We'll see if I was right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. Mr. Secretary, I think I'm like most Americans. I agree with some of the things that you and the White House have done on tariffs, disagree with others. It's clear to me that the President listens to your advice about tariffs, so I want to spend my precious time trying to understand how you think. If Vietnam, for example, came to you tomorrow and said, okay, Mr. Secretary, you win. We're going to remove all tariffs and all trade barriers. Would the United States please do the same? Would you accept that deal?
Absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. That would be the silliest thing we could do.
Why is that?
Vietnam has a $125 billion exports to us and imports from us $12.5 million. And you're thinking, Vietnam exports $125 billion?
I'm aware of the figures, but tell me
where do they get it from? They buy $90 billion from China, then they mark it up and send it to us.
So they're
just a pathway of China to us.
You wouldn't accept that deal?
No, it's a terrible deal. We're the one with money. We're the one with the store. Of course they want us to take down.
What's the purpose of reciprocity then? Is reciprocity not one of your goals? Are you telling the President that we shouldn't seek reciprocity? If that's what you're telling him, why are you trying to do these trade deals?
What do we want? We want to encourage Vietnam to produce products they're great at producing.
But I want to get back to reciprocity. You just said you don't believe in it. You don't accept reciprocity as a goal. What are you negotiating in these trade deals?
Why would we open our bank account and their bank account when ours is 10 times bigger?
Why are you negotiating trade deals? You're trying to get other countries to lower their tariffs and trade barriers in return for us lowering ours.
That's true for the things that they'll take from us.
That's called reciprocity.
Of course.
So are you or are you not seeking reciprocity in these trade deals?
We are absolutely seeking reciprocity with respect to things that can be reciprocal.
But you just said
but when they're importing from China and sending it to us, they're not.
You just said that if a country came to you and offered you the ultimate reciprocity, no tariffs, no trade barriers, in return for us doing the same, you would reject that.
Of course, because they buy from China and send it to us. Don't you agree with me?
Suppose they said we won't buy from China.
Now we're talking. If it was Vietnam,
would you accept that deal?
We would consider it. For what things? For
what
products?
Would you want to change?
Well, there are certain products we want to reshore. We don't want other people making them. We want to make pharmaceuticals here. Right. We need to protect ourselves for certain things.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going to run out of time. Are trade deficits, are you advising the president that trade deficits are always bad in every situation?
No.
Okay. When are trade deficits good?
Trade deficits, for instance, let's say there was a company that had the cure for cancer. Let's call it Cancer Cure. And we were buying it and it was located in another country. We would obviously have a trade deficit with them because they have the only one of it. An example, our technology companies, our great technology companies, we're the only ones with it.
So a trade deficit is okay if they're products we really need.
If they're the only ones with it and we can't do it, then of course it's fine. But if we can do it, then we darn well better think about whether we're supposed to do it and whether we want to do it and if it's in our interest as a country to do it.
Here's what I'm getting at. I've heard you say that well, strike that. I want to go. I'm running out of time. I want to come back to another subject. Tell me your understanding of the Trade Expansion Act.
I don't have a really good understanding of the term. I may know the act, but I may not know its title.
You're not familiar with the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 that gives the president almost unlimited authority to impose tariffs so long as you conduct an investigation? You don't know about that?
Oh, my 232s, of course I do.
Okay.
Sorry, I just didn't know the title of the plan, but of course I know.
Why didn't you advise the White House instead of proceeding under other statutes? Why didn't you advise the White House to proceed under the Trade Expansion Act?
The president chose IEEPA because he could do it swiftly and he could do it sweeping in order to address the underlying problems that had created the $1.2 trillion trade deficit that was haunting the United States of America.
Have you read the opinion in VOS selections, VUS?
I have.
What role does the major questions doctrine play in that decision?
I am not a lawyer, so I can't speak to it with that kind of precision. That's a litigation that's under current investigation.
Are you familiar with the major questions doctrine?
Not offhand, but I did, of course, read the decision.
Well, about 3/4 of the opinion is on the major questions doctrine.
Again, I tend to not know the title. I know the topic and the details of it, but I tend not to focus on titles. Sorry.
I'm way over. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy, thank you. Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today.
Senator John Kennedy didn't come to play. From the moment the hearing began, he made it crystal clear that no one was walking out without answering for the blatant abuse of power and hypocrisy that's infected our federal institutions. First on the chopping block, a Wisconsin judge arrested for helping an illegal immigrant avoid federal custody. Kennedy went straight to the point. If you're a state judge, do you get to pick and choose which federal laws to follow? Absolutely not. And if you break them, you get arrested. That's called equal treatment under the law, a concept the left seems to forget every time it's convenient. Then Kennedy launched into the infamous saga of Lisa Page and Peter Strzok. Yes, the very same federal agents who openly despised Donald Trump and vowed to stop him from becoming president on government time, using government phones, while having an affair. Their text exchange, now burned into the memory of every American patriot, was sickening. Trump's not going to become president, right? No, we'll stop it. That's not just political bias. That's an attempt to hijack democracy from inside the federal government. And yet, after being fired, they both walked away with massive payouts. Strzok got over $1.2 million. Page got $800,000, all courtesy of a sweetheart settlement from the Biden-era Department of Justice. Kennedy didn't hold back. "Pass me the sick bucket," he scoffed. And he's right, because the American people are tired of watching elites fail upward while everyday citizens are held to a different standard. But the rot goes deeper. Kennedy turned to the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, reminding the room that the FBI had that laptop in their possession for 10 full months before the 2020 election, and they knew it wasn't Russian disinformation. Still, they sat on the truth. Instead, Antony Blinken, who would go on to become Secretary of State, organized a public letter signed by 51 so-called intelligence officials claiming the laptop story was Russian propaganda. That lie became a tool to silence a legitimate scandal involving the president's own son right before the election. And who stopped the FBI from informing the public? "I want a name," Kennedy demanded, "not a division, a person with a brain and a beating heart," because someone made that call, and they need to be held accountable. Then came the big bombshell, Jeffrey Epstein. Kennedy asked point blank, did Epstein hang himself or did someone kill him? The director claimed it was a suicide, but when pressed on whether the FBI would release the full investigation, the response was vague and evasive. Kennedy nailed it again. "Before I die, please." It's become the hallmark of the modern federal agency. Delay, deflect, and deny until the public forgets. From there, the conversation turned to trade, and Kennedy once again showed that he's not afraid to confront the Biden administration's doublespeak. In a heated exchange with the secretary, he exposed the absurd logic behind rejecting a reciprocal zero-tariff deal from Vietnam. "Absolutely not," the secretary said. "Why? Because Vietnam imports from China and re-exports to us. So, let's get this straight. Vietnam offers free and open trade, but the Biden team says no because of Chinese influence? Isn't that the whole point of good trade policy, to cut out China?" And when asked whether reciprocity should be the goal in trade deals, the secretary danced around the answer. One minute it was absolutely, the next it was not in that case. Kennedy didn't let it slide. If you're negotiating trade deals without reciprocity, what exactly are you doing? Giving away access to the American market for free? He pressed on. "Are trade deficits always bad?" The secretary said no, claiming that buying a cure for cancer from overseas would be a worthy deficit. Fair point, but what about everything else? Are we really okay with sending trillions overseas while American jobs vanish and manufacturing towns collapse? Kennedy then moved into the legal weeds of trade authority. He challenged the secretary on why the Biden administration didn't use the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, legislation that gives the president sweeping powers to impose tariffs. The response? The White House preferred a quicker option. Translation? Whatever gets around Congress faster. That's not leadership, that's executive overreach. Finally, Kennedy brought up the major questions doctrine, a crucial legal principle that reigns in federal agencies when they overstep their bounds on issues of national importance. The secretary, unsurprisingly, claimed not to know the term, despite it being central to a major ongoing case. Once again, this administration is either willfully ignorant or deliberately evasive. Either way, the American people deserve better. From corrupt bureaucrats getting payouts for sabotaging elections, to cover-ups about foreign influence and Epstein's death, to a trade policy that punishes American industry while letting China slip through the back door. This hearing made one thing clear. The Biden administration is more interested in political damage control than in defending the interests of the United States. This has been the Miles Vexler podcast, and I'm Miles.